I'm Cadell Walker. I'm the Director of Advancement for Bernheim Arboretum and Research Forest. Thank you all so much for joining us. As you may have heard through social media or through direct mail that you may have received, we are in the middle of our end of the year giving campaign called For the Planet, For You. And part of the thought behind that campaign was because we can't physically be together right now, is to be able to show all of the many ways that Bernheim tries to do work both for the planet and for you, for people. And so the Save Bernheim campaign is a great example of that. And so I'm going to kick it off to Dr. Mark Wourms to be able to start that conversation on what Bernheim is doing with the Save Bernheim campaign for the planet, for you. Mark?
Thank you so much, Cadell. Really appreciate your introduction. I'm Mark Wourms. I'm the Executive Director at Bernheim Arboretum and Research Forest. It is good to be here with you all, and thank you for showing your interest. What I want to do is give a little bit of an introduction to Bernheim, because there are a few faces and names that may not be as familiar with Bernheim as we think. And then I want to kind of jump into why we need your voice to help us work for the planet, for you. And then I want to give a kind of a bigger picture. Why is this important? Why does this go beyond the pipeline? How do we really make this happen? And then Andrew Barry is going to turn around and give us some details about this current crossroads that we're out at and how you can help us in opposition to this natural gas pipeline. So Amy, let's have that first slide, please. We're looking for Isaac Wolf Bernheim to pop up. Amy, you want to try one more? Nope.
Oh, okay. Are you looking at the Forest Under Threat website?
I see a black screen. How about everybody else?
Black.
Okay. Cadell, can we jump in?
Can you see it now?
There's Forest. There's the For Planet, For You. Thank you. All right, let's go to Isaac Wolf Bernheim, please. There we go. As many of you know, Bernheim was founded in 1929 by Isaac Wolf Bernheim, who was a bourbon baron after coming over as, an immigrant with $4 in his pocket. So he really made it big. But what's so cool about this is he believed that nature was important for everyone, regardless of race, creed, or economic status. So he wanted us to connect people with nature regardless of their background. And we have been doing that since 1929. Next. We seem to have a delay on our slide switching. Then I'll continue in. Bernheim connects people with nature in a number of ways. We do that through education programs, wonderful programs with kids and students of all ages, with homeschools, with high schoolers, with college activities, and some adult activities. And we do that here at Bernheim and out in the community. We also have wonderful arts and cultural programs. And of course, what's so cool there is that the arts are a way for people to observe nature differently. Many of our arts are environmentally based. And right now we're featuring some work. Oh, there's our nature-based education where we literally immerse people in nature. Amy, next. We are facing a delay in our slides. In our nature arts program, we do indeed have wonderful programs. For example, the Forest Giants in a Giant Forest, which allows us to talk about the ecological importance of large forest blocks like Bernheim at 16,140 acres. as well as talk about the importance of recycling, reuse, reduction, and because they're made out of recycled wood. The forest giants also got involved with our campaign against the pipeline. And in fact, the giants themselves wrote some letters to LG&E and to various officials, and we had children and adults sign on to those giant letters as a way to really emphasize the point that this isn't just about Bernheim. This is also about our neighbors and our communities and trying to keep water, air, and forest intact, and our neighbors healthy, and of course, protect conservation easements. We also have wonderful education programs or research programs, and you've heard about those. Andrew Barry and his team and Evan Patrick have talked about the wonderful wildlife we are working on, the birds, the golden eagles, the oak research. All of those things are important. And then finally, you know, the whole goal of all of this is to connect people with nature. Because if we can form lifelong bonds with nature, then nature is going to be elevated, science is going to be elevated, and smart, wise, sustainable decisions will be made. With that, I wanted to spend a moment then on sort of why this pipeline issue is greater than just Bernheim, why it's important overall. Let's look at the big picture. In 2018, Bernheim purchased 494 acres in Cedar Grove in order to continue building a wildlife corridor up towards the Salt River. That really is important for the long-term movement of both animals and plants as this climate changes. And of course, we purchased that land with the assistance of Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund and the Imperial Bat Conservation Fund. Why that is important is because they required conservation easements and conservation deed restrictions on those lands. And now LG&E is attempting to break those conservation easements for this pipeline. We just simply cannot allow that to happen, because not only does this pipeline affect Bernheim's land and our neighbors' land and community health, if those conservation easements and deed restrictions are broken, pretty much all conservation land in the state and beyond are threatened. Let's think about this for a moment. A 12-mile proposed pipeline across Bullitt County is simply going in the wrong direction if you think about global climate change. That project will take out hundreds of trees, if not thousands of trees. It further divides forest tracts with a widening scar across the forest. That inhibits some wildlife movement. It will harm creeks and springs, and you'll hear more about that from our Director of Conservation, Andrew Barry, in just a moment. But it also is a pipeline that has a 60 to 70 year life expectancy. And so that thing will be pushing hydrocarbons for the next 60 to 70 years. And it will be there, the right of way will be there forever. So who knows what ends up happening in that space over time. We just simply cannot be pumping hydrocarbons into the atmosphere anymore. It affects climate change, it affects our health. Bernheim applauds sustainable, strategic development. We're not against development. We want this area to grow. We want people to have jobs and sustain their families. What we do believe is that a clean, sustainable environment, that clean, sustainable energy is the basis for really strong economic growth in the future and strong, healthy communities. So that's what we're fighting for. I want you to think about how water is connected. Water flows. Bernheim, when water falls on Bernheim, there are 12 headwater streams that take that water out of Bernheim including Cedar Creek, which will be directly impacted by this pipeline. That water flows from Bernheim into the Salt River. It flows from the Salt into the Ohio, from the Ohio into the Mississippi, and finally down to the Gulf of Mexico. And we all know that the Gulf of Mexico is experiencing huge areas, giant, enormous areas of dead zones because of pollutants and nutrients coming out of the Mississippi, the Ohio, the Salt River, and actually they have been traced back in part to Kentucky. So we need to protect water quality everywhere. Bernheim's role is to protect forests, it's to protect the quality of water. We need to protect those conservation easements and deed restrictions. That is our job. We are working for the planet for you. LG&E must switch to Plan B if they have one. Ideally, Plan B would be to provide true effective energy conservation programs throughout their customers so that these pipelines aren't needed. Plan B should include delivering clean, sustainable energy to communities. Plan B should be to respect natural lands, conservation easements, rural communities, and really figure out how to move together for a clean, sustainable future. With your help, we prevented the highway bypass study from showing any routes across Bernheim and other natural lands. That was a big success because of your voices. With your help and your voice, we can now get LG&E and their parent company, PPL, to reconsider this pipeline. We need them to consider clean energy, sustainable energy for all communities that we love. You know, that's the big picture. Bernheim needs your voice. It's short turnaround for this public comment period. We only have until December 18th, just 8 days from now at 4:30 p.m., all public comment shuts down. This has been the only time that the public has been asked to voice their opinion on this project at all. And that comment is based upon a water quality certification. And so there's two ways you can do it. You can send letters or you can send that email. You can get more information at bernheim.org/forest under threat. But what I'd like to do is ask Andrew Berry, our Director of Conservation, to step in and talk about more of the specifics about what this water quality certification is and why it's important, why water quality will be impacted by this pipeline. Andrew Berry, please.
Thank you, Mark. Again, I'm Andrew Berry, Director of Conservation here at Bernheim. You know, this is really a critical time in the fight against the pipeline because we are, you know, we have a water quality certification application, which is now being reviewed by the Division of Water for the LG&E proposed pipeline across Bernheim. The comment period's open until December 18th. It took us a little while to review it, and now we've put together some comments, and we feel that there's a lot of new information to be concerned about in this water quality application. Again, what Bernheim is trying to do here is to protect our land, protect our conservation easements and deed restrictions that protect this wildlife corridor. And you know, there are some pretty specific examples about impacts to water quality, which really are reasons why this certification should be denied. The first one that I want to cover, and I'm going to go through all of these again, but the first one is hydrostatic wastewater discharge at Bernheim. Okay, so this is new information that we got on page 131 of this nearly 300-page document. And the hydrostatic wastewater discharge is very concerning because it carries pollutants. This is a process where they fill the pipe with water and pressurize it to test it. And then all of that water has to be discharged somewhere. And it comes out of the pipe a lot dirtier than it goes in. And they have proposed to put this on Bernheim. There's also a serious risk of landslides and destabilizations, permanent damage to streams and springs, permanent clearing of forests, and damage to landforms. We're talking about 38 acres of forest along the length of the pipeline and 8 acres directly on Bernheim that would be permanently cleared and lost at a time when we just can't afford to lose any more trees or forest in general. And these impacts to the water quality and the sensitive species, from what we found in this document, will be long-term and permanent. And also, we're seeing in this application that they have insufficiently reported key features such as springs, bat roost trees, and other items that are required to be accurately represented in these application materials. So let's jump into a little bit of this. Let's see. Is that a white slide for you all?
Yes.
It is. Let's try the next one. Here's a map. How about that? Mark, is that showing up? There's going to be a little bit of delay, I'm afraid, as we go through these. But basically what I want to show here is buried on page 131 in these engineering maps, which really can't fully, detail all the ways that they would have to protect water quality. Again, this application is to show how LG&E would prevent impacts to water quality on these tributaries of Cedar Creek. They don't do that with these drawings and these engineering, maps. But there is some information, as they say, always read the fine print. And as we got into the fine print on this, you can see right here in the middle that a possible hydrostatic test discharge location is proposed on Bernheim. Very alarming. Not only could they be discharging at the time of the construction, but they could be discharging at any time in the life of this pipeline. Those are permanent impacts. They would have to apply for a separate permit to do this discharge of wastewater. But here's the bigger concern. What are the pollutants? Well, number one, where are they going to get all this water? Is it going to come from the groundwater, or is it going to come from a municipal source? Both are problematic. If it's a municipal source, it already contains things that can't be put in the creek. And they're essentially trying to turn Cedar Creek into a drainage ditch for wastewater. We're seeing this with oil and gas all over the country, where not only is it discharging of test wastewater, but also fracking fluids and other things. And there is, mentions throughout the length of this pipeline of deep wells that LG&E has drilled. And, it makes you wonder, if we're just now learning that they're proposing hydrostatic wastewater discharge on Bernheim, then, what else would they be proposing down the line? There are so many unknowns with this. Not only that, but they would be discharging this onto a conservation easement protected land, which does not allow for any discharge of pollutants into the waterways or on any of the landforms. And how could LG&E propose that they're going to keep this discharged water on their pipeline easement? Simply does not fly. And this was never in the initial proposal from LG&E to Bernheim. So I see some of these photos aren't showing up so well. So I'm gonna click through here a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna stop sharing and see if Amy can bring up the presentation from the landslide perspective. But let me just continue on, and I can just keep talking about this. Sometimes it's just easier. I do so much better in person with these things, and I apologize about the technology. I feel so distant from everybody. I'm really more of a one-on-one type person. But think about the landslides. We've all seen over the past decade the amount of increased precipitation, and you see the stories all over the country about roads and other logging operations and just knobs in general that are sliding and slipping. And this is how knobs form. So some of that is natural, but when you go through and you blast out rock outcrops and you clear forests and you put pipelines along seeps and springs, which are already unstable, and that's where the landslides form anyway, along these seeps. And if you can see this image, it's right here being screen shared. This is the pipeline that's being proposed to be cleared and have the pipe go through. We've actually got direct communications between East Kentucky Power and LG&E in emails which are evidence in part of the trial that show that East Kentucky Power has long had slips and slides along their transmission line going across the Cedar Grove Wildlife Corridor. And they recommend for LG&E to avoid that, not only to protect their own equipment, but because of the risk for damage to the pipeline. And Bernheim is dealing with this on another pipeline right now, the Marathon pipeline, which goes across Wilson Creek, which has landslide and slip problems for decades, and now is getting a further look by Marathon because of that. You know, these things are real, and you can move a mountain, but you can't really prop them back up, no matter what the engineers tell you. And the BMPs that are being recommended or proposed in this application, well, people will tell you that those are just the best management practices, but they don't fix the water quality issue. They don't prevent sedimentation. It's just the best guidelines that are recommended, but they fail all the time in projects. Engineers know that. LG&E knows that. And you look also at these water quality certification materials that LG&E submitted. They are fully inaccurate for the number of streams and springs that are being impacted. So, Amy, if you can forward slides a couple. There are some slides in here of spring in particular. This is the route that would be cleared on the right side of this transmission line. This is Cedar Creek. This map right here that's up, Amy, you can leave that for a second. Cedar Creek, for those of you who know it, flows into the Salt River. It is a Kentucky division of water, exceptional use water, meaning that it is I wouldn't say pristine, but it's higher water quality, and it has very good aquatic health. And you can see in this red, and I got this directly from the Division of Water mapping portal, that is protected waterway. But ironically, this pipeline that's proposed would cut through 5 of the headwater tributaries of that exceptional use water. If you impact 5 headwaters, it is directly going to impair that exceptional use waterway. I mean, that's 101 basics with the hydrology. And again, with LG&E proposing to turn this creek and these tributaries into drainage ditches for stuff like hydrostatic test wastewater, this is very problematic. Amy, can you continue on? I'll pick up on a few more of these. Of course, impacts to sensitive species are always a concern. We've got a number of rare, threatened, and endangered plants and animals, everything from Kentucky glade cress, which will be impacted, to bats, federally protected Indiana bat and northern long-eared bat. We've got rare snails directly along the route, the hidden spring snail and the bluff vertigo, which would be impacted. Of course, snails are so rare, there's not a lot of protections for snails. As everybody's told me, a snail can't stop a project like this. Yeah, that's right. But the cumulative effects to other sensitive species, all the way from migratory birds, up to even the golden eagles at Bernheim that need these large forest blocks, it all impacts it. And when you're clearing sections of forest like this, 8 acres on Bernheim, 38 acres along the project, permanently cleared, that's a step in the wrong direction in the greater Louisville area. As I said before, we got to keep every tree we've got. It's too critical for us to keep the ecosystem services and keep the natural land that we got at this time. Amy, do you want to advance it forward a few more slides, and then I'll wrap up. So what Bernheim has done at this point, we've reviewed that water quality application. We've put together our letter and our comments to the Division of Water and Director Paul Miller. We're asking everybody else that's concerned about this to go online. We've tried to make it easy for you all to find the link. Of course, all these comments are buried, and if you're not going to a specific place, you can't find them, and it's not very user friendly. We'll just say that. We've tried to make it a little more user friendly. To make a comment, obviously we hope you're supporting Bernheim, but if you've got any comments, We've always, supported open and friendly dialogue, civil dialogue around these issues. As Mark mentioned before, we had some success in keeping a interstate connector, basically a full-on 8-lane interstate, from going directly across the Cedar Grove Wildlife Corridor. And so we have had some success, and it's all because of the support that we've gotten from people like you all and from the greater Louisville community. We've had less media coverage and less, I guess, outreach over the last few months. Part of that's because of the news cycle and the way everything's just been in the world. But at the same time, it's because a lot of stuff has been happening behind the scenes. We've still got a condemnation lawsuit in both federal court and possibly state court. A lot of uncertainty there. I could just say there's a lot of time left in both of those. We've also got the Division of Water petition, and we've got a Public Service Commission complaint also that is still going. So there's a lot of time left, in this fight. And I think you're going to hear a lot more of it over the coming months. Obviously, this thing can end three ways. This thing could end with Bernheim, winning in the courts and protecting our wildlife corridor with the help of you all. That would be tremendous. I mean, I can't tell you how much it would mean to Bernheim, but also to the local communities and to the wildlife around Louisville. We could also end with LG&E persevering in the courts and condemning this land and clearing our forests with bulldozers and blasting out our rocks, impacting our streams and springs permanently. And we'll all have to watch that unfold, and it won't be pretty, I can assure you that. But we can also have a third outcome, and that could be that LG&E, comes to an agreement that Bernheim is not the right place for this pipeline, and that there are better alternatives, and that they've had a plan B all along, and they know how they can get gas to their customers. Listen, there's been talk in the communities that LG&E is trying to pit Bernheim's fight against this condemnation lawsuit as being a reason why people aren't getting gas for new houses or businesses. And that's simply not true. LG&E knows that's not true. And a lot of the people involved in the higher up decisions know that's not true. And we just ask that everybody be honest about the situation, because as an organization or a private landowner, defending your land against condemnation is a basic American right. And we're doing nothing but what would be expected from a conservation organization who strive for 92 years to protect water quality in forests. So that's about it. I guess I'll throw it back over to Mark or Cadell or some final thoughts and then questions for sure. Thank you all.
We'll have Cadell jump in. Just want to make sure that people know they can send questions in to the chat room, and we're going to have time to take some of those questions and are happy to do so. Cadell Walker, our Director of Advancement, please.
Hey, Amy, do you have the slide you can share for me?
It's up.
Oh, it's up. I just don't see it. Need to change my view there. All right. So thank you all. And we'll open it up for chat questions in just a minute. We've had a lot of individuals. We've also had a lot of businesses step up to show support, especially when we were out hitting the pavement, so to speak, talking about Save Bernheim, kind of doing the Bernheim Under Threat road shows. And we had businesses that, were signed distribution centers. They collected donations. They helped us out in a number of ways. And so we would like to give back to them as well. And so I have this chart here, and we're going to be sharing this on social media, but I also just wanted to share this with you all. So as you think about the holidays and you think about getting carry out or delivery or what have you during the pandemic, these are some businesses that have really stepped up to help us. And so I wanted to share those with you all so that you all in return might be able to help them out as well during the holiday season and throughout the year. Also, we've been doing these For the Planet for You Zoom Facebook or Zoom series that we've been doing through social media. And so I'd also invite you all, we have one more left. And so the next one's going to be kind of fun. It's going to be all of our wildlife wildlife video and photos from our trail cams. So kind of the hidden Bernheim that everybody doesn't get to see, and especially after hours. So I would encourage you guys to tune in next Thursday for that. If you go to bernheim.org/fortheplanet, you'll be able to see the Zoom link there to be able to register for that. Our campaign for the planet for you ends December 31st. Our goal is to raise $50,000. And to date, we are at $48,000. So we're very close. So hopefully you guys can kick us over the top. So I just want to invite you all to participate in that. And then also just to share it on social media, let your friends know about the campaign. This has been a hard year for all nonprofits, Bernheim included. And so if anybody can step up and help us, we'd really appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to questions now. And I think Amy is going to help with some of the chat questions.
Sure. So the first question is.
Amy, can we stop sharing your screen?
Yeah. Thanks.
There we go. Thank you.
Do people really want to see my whole face?
Yes.
So the first question is from Dick Dennis. He's asking if the courts are just sitting back and waiting for agency action, or are they deciding anything at the moment?
Well, there are decisions in the works, and what happens is that these cases go through these cycles and circles. There's a motion, the court then has to consider those motions. Both sides get to write in and give their opinions on those motions, and then back and forth, and then the court decides on that particular motion. That then affects moving forward with that same case. So that's what we're facing in some of this. Additionally, there has been an interesting twist in that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was required to be sued because of the imperiled bat conservation funds, conservation deed restrictions on this land. When that happened, suddenly part of this got pulled from state court or circuit court, state circuit court into federal court. And so that just happened a couple weeks ago. We're waiting to understand exactly what that means. We're waiting to understand what that process might be, who all will be defendants in that federal court, et cetera, et cetera. So those kinds of things, as Andrew said, are occurring behind the scenes. We have great legal representation who are working hard to make sure that all three of these processes move smoothly. But it just takes time, and it takes tenacity, and your support, all of your support and voices give us reason to stay tenacious, to stay the course. We think it's important that we protect these conservation easements and deed restrictions, our clean water that is actually everybody's clean water, our wildlife that is everyone's wildlife. And so that is where we stand. Andrew, do you want to add anything to that?
I won't add much. I will just say, the court process is always slow, but the pandemic hasn't helped. And so there's been some setbacks with that. And, and also our legal team has been doing fantastic. Of course, Randy Strobo and Tom Fitzgerald with Kentucky Resources Council, and I just feel really good where we're at right now. And I think that the reason why it's dragging on and is because we've got a lot of valid arguments that we've been making. And I think that there's going to be some precedents set with this case. And again, we're not just fighting for conservation easements at Bernheim, but conservation easements all across the state of Kentucky, held by Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund and other groups. So that's a little bit of a summary. Thank you, Dick, for the question.
That is the only question thus far.
Anyone else like to throw?
Well, we just got another one from Dick. Are there landowners who would welcome the easement money and the pipeline could move there?
Ooh, LG&E has been successful at achieving buying some of the easements along this route. We're not the only landowner who is opposing it, but there's a 10 or so that are opposing with us in the Cedar Grove neighborhood and rural area. So Bernheim's not alone. I can't speak for other landowners. We don't want to say, hey, not in our backyard, but maybe you'll take it. What we'd rather say is, LG&E, let's figure out how to provide clean, sustainable energy so that these kinds of pipelines are not necessary. Let's figure out how to do conservation and solar and wind and other kinds of things that can be done on site so that these kinds of pipelines aren't necessary in the future. That's really where we need to go. Short-term solutions should be possible. We're not pipeline engineers. We don't pretend to be. But there are lots of routes that are already impacted from Louisville down here. And I personally just don't understand why there aren't other considerations. There were 16 routes that were studied, or 12 routes. Andrew, 12 or 16? 12 routes that were studied. And guess what? The one that they're trying to build across Bernheim and across Cedar Grove Wildlife Corridor and Cedar Grove neighborhoods was not even one of the 12 that was studied by their consultants. So this came out of the blue because I think it's the shortest, least expensive course from point A to point B, I would guess. So, you know, LG&E has a lot more wiggle room than Bernheim does. We're a conservation organization. We're here to protect land, water, wildlife, healthy communities. We can't wiggle on that.
Yep. And I guess I'll just finish by saying,
Thank you.
You know, there's going to be a lot more said over the coming, I guess what we have, a little over a week of comment period left. You know, Bernheim is going to be putting in our comments. We're going to make those public. We're going to include a lot more information in text and some maps into that. And so, you know, if you all can go online and make a comment or just, you know, continue the discussion around the issue, we greatly appreciate all of your all's help and support. And, you know, haven't heard the last of this. So you all, thank you all.
Please, we need your voice. Go online, find out For the Planet for You, find out Bernheim Under Threat, additional information. The websites, the addresses are all there. Sample letters are there, talking points are there. We want to make it easy for you because your voice matters. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. For all of you all that were asking for the URLs, they're now in the chat. It's forestunderthreat.com. So you all can all go on there and you'll see sample letters, you'll see more resources, talking points, all kinds of things like that. So again, it's forestunderthreat.com, or if you go to bernheim.org, you'll see a big picture on the front of the homepage that says help save Bernheim, forest under threat, and click the details button and it'll take you to the same place.
All right, thank you everyone. We appreciate your support overall, and we really appreciate your support on this issue. Together, we can sustain a future that's bright and vibrant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.